Hello and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and their Allies. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. Thanks for tuning in today. We have a slam-packed show, a big roundtable discussions on affordability and solution-based ideas. And I have a whole group joining me today.
This is what you call a six-pack.
This is called a six-pack. Like a nine-pack, actually. Yeah. A six-pack and a half.
We need 3 more for the Hollywood Squares.
That's right.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Some people call it like the Brady Bunch or something. I call it the the PWD bunch of income-based, solution-based ideas, and everybody has these great ideas, and we're going to pile into all these things, and I mean, just give people money. I mean, money goes around. You give, and then they put back into the communities, and wow, I mean, we're all taxpayers.
But the government has to study it more, Brent.
We have to study it.
Oh,
because they don't know how to solve poverty. They have to study it more.
Well,
I
had somebody on the letter about DERB going, well, how are we going to pay for this? And I just was like, I was just like, well, or what's the cost? And I'm like, well, what's the cost? The cost of not doing it is lives.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were like, but it's going to cost. And I'm just like, the money goes, like you said, it goes back. We have a circular economy. It goes back in. Like, you give people that are poor more money, it's a proven. They've done it over and over again. They've done the studies. We tend to buy things and buy locally, and we invest in our communities with that money for our goods.
Probably more than any other segment.
And we pay off debts.
And then those businesses profit, and the people working in them have better wages and better hours, and like, I don't know what's so hard to understand about that. Like, why people think that, giving people that have invested in our society already, and many still are, a little bit more money so that they can patronize their local businesses in their community. And that provides jobs, that provides income for others, and it just goes in a circle, like
trickle down effect.
Trickle up. It trickles up. We don't trickle down. We trickle up.
Trickle down. Go up.
So
no Reaganomics here.
the problem that people always ask is, well, where's the money come from? I mean, well, the cost of having people homeless, the cost of having people putting these people in prison when they break the law of stealing something to buy food, or whatever it is, to put them, they end up in prison, ends up costing us more money than it would be to just go and give them for example, I suggest $4,000 a month, because I'm just doing the mathematics here on all of this, is at $4,000 a month, more and more people would not go and consider breaking the law. They would need to break the law to go and buy food. They just wouldn't. I mean, that's where a lot of people are breaking the law these days, is to go and steal food. And that's where, so if you solve a problem, you eliminate criminality and the potentiality for criminality. And the problem is yes, the biggest problem we have here is we have a system designed to go and have a meat grinder with a legal system. So people have jobs and people create jobs. So that's a circular economy as well.
The good thing I'll say is, at least in Canada, we have not privatized the prison system, because if you're in the
true.
US, it is an industry, and they literally do things to make sure that they can keep people in prison so that they can profit off of it.
Yeah.
So
Well, exactly.
that's our saving grace, but it's still not a good system. I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying,
right.
It doesn't matter where you are. There's always issues with this whole matter. And, right now the housing crisis is what's driving me nuts. I just did
before we jump to that, I just wanted to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Everybody tuning in today, listening, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. My friends around here,
happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving and Indigenous Peoples Day in America. And
I'm just thankful I'm in Canada and not a lot of other places in the world right now.
Right, with the conflict going on.
But but I am struggling to find things to be thankful for lately, because I looked at a place. I had a great conversation with the lady. Then she didn't advertise whether she allowed pets. So that was my last thing, because I could tell she was sold on me. And I said, well, the only thing is, I have a pet. And she was like kind of iffy. And I had kind of written her off. And then my friend was helping me pack up my kitchen. And all of a sudden I get this text message. Can you come by at 12 to fill out a rental application and meet the tenant upstairs, which is her niece in this case. And now I'm hopeful, because I made the short list, because she was viewing, and then she was going to make a short list, and I'm like, I made the short list. And then around 11 o'clock, an hour before I was supposed to be there at noon today, an hour before, she calls me and she says, I'm sorry, it's rented. And this is what's been happening. It's like, well, because they're getting so many people, and there's just not enough places in Calgary anymore. I mean, it's not even a matter of just rent. Like, everybody wants to talk about the price of rent. It's like, even if you can afford all the rent in the world, people are struggling because there's just not enough housing. And recently, City Council, and I keep talking about this everywhere I go, recently City Council had approved to open up some city land and put in temporary modular homes for families. And, I think that's great. But the problem we keep having is governments at all levels keep focusing on families and excluding single people, which is the reason why single person households are more than 2 times as likely to be in core housing need than households with more than one individual. It's that focus. And so I keep putting it out there. The other thing I keep going on about is I want to put a tiny home village built around an urban neighborhood. I've been trying to promote that. It's been sidelined because of my own housing situation.
Right.
But it's a solution to 2 problems, 3 problems maybe, climate, housing, and food. People are like, oh, we got community gardens. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I did have one more hopeful thing that I'm going to say before, and then I'll let somebody else say something about this. I went on one of my favorite podcasts in Alberta. It's an Alberta political podcast called The Breakdown Alberta, or The Breakdown AB. And it's run by Nate Pake. And I'm a regular caller in, and, often have conversations. And anyway, normally I speak to what they're talking about on the show, but the last time I just came in and I said, hey, look, I know he's working on a housing, some housing segments on the housing crisis. And I said, I know you're working on this, but I just need to let you know, this is what's happened to me. I'm technically homeless right now. I'll be officially homeless on the 15th. And, this is what I've been going through. This is what the minister, Jason Nixon's office, told me, that it wasn't true that the shelters are all full. But if you talk to every frontline worker that's working in the shelters or trying to get people into the shelters, or they will tell you that they can't get people in. There's not enough room. So, and it was horrible. So anyway, a couple days later, I get a DM, and because they sell merchandise related to the show, and a couple days later, I get a DM, and they just said, "Look, we had a conversation with Nate, and after that conversation, we've decided to do this fundraiser because you're such a great advocate for, disability and poverty and housing that we wanted to do something for you, and so we've done a beanie fundraiser. So they're selling their beanies, and the proceeds of selling their beanies is tagged to help me out a little. So I just,
cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, let's pass the mic over to Dan. Dan, housing. How is it in your neck of the woods? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Do you have any ideas? When I say ideas, I mean like solution-based, just kind of things about housing. What do you see things at? I mean, obviously there's not enough supply to go around. They're projected there's this morning I was listening to the news. I tried calling in as same as you, Cassandra, and the actual producer answered and said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, we're actually full." I'm like, they knew who I was. Sorry, we're full. I'm thinking, damn it. It was all about housing and about affordability. And they're saying right now across Canada, just for BC alone, they need 1 million new homes just for BC. They mentioned different jurisdictions, Alberta, Ontario, a huge amount. Like there's just a waft of, they're having to repurpose old stock and make new stock for all the population that's booming into the country. But anyway, I was just wondering what do you see things at with housing? Do you see it maybe?
Here in Toronto, I see a lot of things happening, but nothing happening. If that makes any sense. So there's a couple of modular projects in the works. I think 2 or 3 have gone up already. And again, I'm sure it's different all across the country, but here it's treated too much like a business and not like a human right. However, we got a deputy city manager here that, I don't know if I'm repeating, I apologize, but Jag Sharma, and I have confidence in him because he's the one in charge of now doing all the builds here in Toronto. And he used to be the CEO of the public housing here in Toronto.
Oh, good for you.
Community housing.
Well,
I'm all for giving the person a chance, and I'm hopeful because we now, whether you like her or not, we now have an NDP mayor in Olivia Chow, and she's hell-bent apparently on making everything affordable. So where the prices are staying what I would call stagnant in new builds, we definitely need more affordable housing and supportive housing with wraparound services.
Yeah, just so you know, Alberta and especially Calgary is the most financialized rental housing market in the country.
Yeah.
And so I hear you.
It's
to solve housing.
Go ahead, Ed.
Sorry. One of the things, really, in order to solve this housing crisis, we're actually going to have to take a look at this, as if it's a military operation, because that's the only solution that really seems left is we just get the housing market and say, okay, we're going to be building these types of custom houses. It's going to be 20 by 40. This is what it is. There you go. It's going to be built exactly the same. You and your neighbor will have the exact same layout. It doesn't matter. That's just going to be the way it is. It's going to be built with a new technology where it's all going to be built, top of the line, and it could be built in one day.
Tiny, you can make a tiny, like I've been researching tiny homes versus larger modular, and you can build a tiny home in a day, 16 days for a small modular. And the thing is I've been trying to say, this is not a crisis. This is an emergency, and provinces and municipalities and they need to call this as an emergency situation. True. Like they do with a flood or a fire where people are being evacuated and they call a state of emergency. Well, our housing is in a state of emergency. Poverty,
Yeah.
And the only the only solution left is right now is just to go and nationalize the situation of the building of exact same types of houses, so we can just put roofs over people's heads. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
And and we need
wartime measures, like
exactly. And that,
totally.
and as to me, it's like, it doesn't seem to me that any of our parties at any level are taking this as serious it needs to be taken.
Nope.
Let alone for,
because they have a roof over their head. That's why.
Well, the other
Well,
thing,
I agree with you.
Well,
Nobody,
yeah, exactly.
even I didn't understand until I was in the situation where I had to look for housing. I could not fathom just how bad it was. Like, there was nothing in my psyche that could have imagined I was going to go through this until I had to go through it. And so I mean, a part of me, I can empathize with, if I couldn't wrap my head around it, then I can empathize how, people with much nicer incomes couldn't wrap their heads. But I think that's why it's really important that we keep pushing that this is not a housing crisis. This is a housing emergency, and they need to call a state of emergency, because the amount of people going homeless every day, people with jobs, families, single people, that there's nothing in, like, I've got, even my landlord said to me, he goes, you're like the tenant that I always look for. You don't trash the place, you're long-term, your rent's always paid. I've got excellent character references as well as an excellent landlord reference, and I've been in the same place for 8 years. There is nothing about me that should, I don't have any addictions, I don't have a criminal record. Like, there's nothing about me that should deter somebody from renting from me, except that there's just too many to choose from. Like, landlords are having to make a decision because they're getting hundreds of applications, and they're making a decision. Like, it's like making a life and death. Who am I going to take out of desperation, out of this 100 applicants?
Well, exactly. And I was in the same position, I was in the same position several years ago, where my mom went, I lived with my mom, and she sold the condo, and we were living in the Lower Mainland, and we had gone through applications upon applications upon applications. We finally came across one, right? And I basically called up and I said, what's the situation on this rental, to the back of the company? I said, because here's the situation I'm at, is I need a place to rent by this date. I need to be able to fill out rental papers by this date. And I need to know, if you guys are serious about getting this rented as soon as possible. And for $2,000 a month is what we were paying for this house, right? And that was 4 years ago now. Okay, so that place would rent for about $3,000 to almost maybe $3,500 now, right?
At least.
Right. So, right now I'm living with my mom in a mobile home park up in, where I'm at, and we're paying pad rent that's over $600 a month. And it's like, people think that, living in a mobile home is cheap.
No,
it's the pad rent that kills you.
I can't even, because you're paying for often you're buying the mobile home, paying a mortgage on the mobile home, plus
and paying the
your bad rent. Yeah,
exactly.
And then all your, depending on the park, you might have to also pay for all your utilities in some cases too.
Well, most times, yeah.
And I can't even find, like, I've been looking, and I can't even afford, like, I can't afford a down payment, and there's nothing. There used to be rentals in two of the major ones in the city, and there's not anything left for rent, very little for sale. And
I mean, what do you have to do? Find some 2-bit piece of dump that's a dump up north for $50,000 to go and buy it, if you're allowed to even own. I mean, this is what is what they're resorting to us to for in this current system, and this is why, to me, is getting the ball and chain, as it were, the government off our back and just giving us the money and say, you figure out how you're going to spend it. If you want to waste it on drugs, have at her. If you want to go and live a life and get your life together, have at her. Don't, but this is the take it or leave it situation, right?
I remember
Tom's got his hand up, Brent.
Oh yeah. I'll get to you right in one sec, Tom. I was going to kind of project on that topic. Is I remember, MJ, the government, the government predecessor, she would say predecessor upon predecessor. Well, yeah, if the housing is unaffordable, you can't afford it. Just move up north, everyone. Just move up north. Remember that line?
Ghost town.
Yes.
But there's nothing there.
Let's build 15-minute cities up north.
Well, the other thing too, I mean, just before Tom speaks, is we have a bit of a controversy now with BC housing. I mean, the shit kind of hit the fan with BC housing,
with
right?
Atira.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
And so it's like, you know, so it's like
I've known people that worked at Otira, and I heard the stories.
So
I'm surprised it's taken this
I haven't heard
long.
about this one.
Yeah, so you know, you can say, well, let's get the government to handle it, but I mean, if they F it up, you know, so it's like, what do you do? Anyway, you can go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking about like there's a bunch of things I had written down. There's a Boston Pizza and a few other places in Victoria that one of the reasons that they had the labor shortage was because they couldn't find people, because people couldn't afford to live and rent in Victoria. There's one guy that builds houses who's living in his truck up island, and so it's like I just think like how do we have that situation? So it's like, is current stock full and we need to add more housing, or is it something else? And that's where I come to my usual kind of like one trick pony banging the same gong, which is we have this perfect storm of two things. Incomes are half of what they should be, and speculation is also called rentier capitalism, where it's like you might build a whole bunch of new housing stock, and then along come these guys and go, right, we're claiming all of them as well. It's like we got to make sure that we also go up to speculation, because otherwise that's the thing that like drives all of it up, and they can charge whatever they like.
Well, it's
you know,
it's also the you know, like to your point, Tom, it's also like, you know, we've got pension funds, investment trusts, all these publicly over and above REITs, but all these publicly traded entities, and what they're doing is they're buying up all the housing stock and pushing normal home buyers out of the market, and smaller landlords that might rent out a secondary suite in a house that they live in. They're driving them out of the market because they're outbidding them, and then they're driving up the cost of real estate so much that your home's appreciating, but it's appreciating so quickly that you can no longer afford the property taxes, because your property taxes are based on a percentage of.
Totally.
That's me, because because my condo here is 28 years old. I've lived here for 18 years, but it's 28 years old, and I bought it for what was $129. It's a 900 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I bought it for $129, and now like I just got the valuation for it again this year. It jumped from 300,000 to 600,000, over 600,000, like double in 1 year. It doubled. Oh my God. It doubled valuation in 1 year.
How quick?
And now you got to pay tax on that 600,000.
And I have to pay tax on it on a disability pension. Like, how am I supposed to do that? Actually, it's not even a pension, we should say. But you know, disability, income assistance. You know,
see, like Kim Hines talking about like in Victoria here, there was some place across from City Hall that had some insane rental price, like over like 10 grand a month, and we were all like, what? But that's what I wonder about, like how, like, is Victoria's, for instance, Victoria's stock completely full, or is it like there's a whole bunch of empty stuff but nobody can afford it anyway because of all that kind of like Airbnb and all the like guys who I remember like as a performer who played in a band who played some seniors homes. Some of these seniors homes would, like, this was back in the day, they'd rent for like $3,000 a month for a 1-bedroom. This is way back. And they were nice seniors homes, but still, and they'd have an entertainment budget of like less than $200 a month for all the seniors. And that's how I knew about that. And the guys who owned it lived in, like, you know, Barbados, or lived like California, or in Hawaii, or, you know, because they're just, they just.
Well, there's American companies that own not just seniors residents, but they buy up property in Canada for, you know, income property. Yeah. And so we've got certain property management companies that are like based out of Arizona and stuff like that, and they charge. There's a 55 plus building. It's just apartments.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a 400 or 500 square foot or 590 square foot 1-bedroom apartment. So just a small 1-bedroom apartment, and they are charging for like there's no meals, entertainment, program, nothing. Yeah. Just and you have to pay your utilities, and they're charging just a couple dollars short of $4,000 a month.
Yeah. There are
and they're empty. They've got places. They're constantly advertising, saying, "Come live with us." And it's like all these people need those places, but they can't. Like, who can? I mean, if I could afford that kind of money, I'd get a mortgage or have that.
I don't know
exactly.
I don't know I don't know if you saw this, Brent or Tom, like talking about Victoria. It was a few months ago now, but I saw a listing in Victoria, and it was actually at a hotel. This was a hotel, but they were you could buy. There was a few suites you could buy to actually rent and live in, or not actually rent. Sorry, like to just buy it outright. But so it was like buy one room, and it was or actually it was renting. Sorry. So to rent one room in a hotel, it was $3,000 a month, and this is just a standard room in a hotel, and it said it comes with a hot plate. You know,
so I was checking out pet friendly motels, like the cheap ones, the ones that have always been the cheap motels in the city, like they're not the, and they like 24 to 2,800 a month.
Crazy.
And it used to be you could rent them for like under 1,000 a month, just like a couple of years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like it was a really economical way to live for, if you
because like right now, like there are tons of Airbnbs that are going on within the cities, and there's a gentleman on social media on X. I still call it Twitter, okay? But anyway, look him up, follow him. His name's Mortimer, okay? And the city and the government trying to shut him down. They're trying to shut him down because he's exposing out all the listings of Airbnb houses that are for sale. Oh, it's been vacant for so long, but all of a sudden there's activity, people coming and going, fake businesses licenses. And they got even doctors using these licenses. I mean, are you kidding me? But anyway, whatever. So they're renting these places out. The city knows about it, but they're putting a blind eye to. Victoria knows about it. I know for a fact in our building here, there's 2 business licenses in our laundry room. One has a mount there, and there's another business license underneath that, a dollar amount that's renewable every year for your business purposes. That has the business license number. And I thought, wow, $88. Wow, why is it so low? Another one's a huge amount. Why? Because they allow that to go on.
We've got a huge issue with that here, and I was at city council, like talking to city councilors about. And I went and I was just blown away because their thing about they do these percentage calculations and I don't begrudge. There's a young couple next door. They just bought their house and right now they're doing Airbnb, but then eventually they're going to move upstairs and rent out the basement as a regular rental. They're just trying to get ahead. Right. But their excuse was that the majority, because they've got a license and you have to live in the house kind of thing. And so as long as they are living in the house, they can get the license for the Airbnb. But the thing is people need those suites. Right. And they're saying, well, it's such a low percentage. And it's like, well, considering like every single landlord I've talked to, and I've talked to dozens now, has like 100 to 200 applications or inquiries coming in for their suite, and they're shutting down in a day because they can't handle the volume. And you're like, your excuse is it's a percentage. And I'm like, well,
it's almost like they're making more off of Airbnb than they are renting per month, because I mean, here's part of the other equation too, is the property taxes, the municipal taxes. They're so high, and I learned a lot of this stuff when we were living in Langley, once upon a time. Of course, that is on our bucket list to move back there. But I was talking to some of the developers who built places right from scratch, and I got to learn about this stuff. Is like, why are these places so expensive? The guy goes, look. my crew. I got my crew here. He says, there's the foreman over there. So I was talking to him, and I got to know them. They tried running me down with their bulldozer because they were trying to build the other building, and deliberately, laughing away. But anyway, joke around, and I brought them over a case of water one time, because they were just boiling. They were sweating. It was just, and I had this whole caseload of water. I had just lots of it anyway. I got a really good deal on it, and I knew we weren't going to drink all this water, so I brought it over for them. Why not? So I gave it to the boys, and they taught me a lot about the developmental costs, the materials, the softwood lumber. They said all the dispute going on with Canada and the U.S. They said, we sell the trees down to them, they process it, and they sell it back to us for a bigger cost. That goes into the formula. Red tape, bureaucratic, the guy goes BS that goes on with municipal versus provincial. They said they need to come to a common ground because these costs get passed on to you as a renter. And
they are doing something about it, and it's starting to take effect. But the problem is, none of those buildings are being built are going to be ready for at least 2 to 3 years. And
exactly.
and I keep saying, well, that's great. I'm glad you're doing this finally. But what about today? What about yesterday? What about last week? What about there are people that have been going homeless every month. What are you doing for them?
Yeah.
We need we need solutions, and we need the long-term solutions, but we need the immediate solutions as well.
And there's immediate. There's a lot of places right now. Like I can pull up a listing right now. I go under Zumper, and actually I'll let everyone know that. So Zumper, okay, if you go under Google, just Zumper space whatever city it is in Canada, punch it in, and it'll bring you up a listing of all the housing that's available in that city. So I could punch in Zumper, Langley, and it'll give me up a whole listing, and I could say, wow, wouldn't it be nice to live there? And I'm thinking, wow, if the government would actually just listen to its citizens, and actually immediate solution would be give them like you mentioned, MJ, just give them the lump sum or as an idea. Now you can go and rent somewhere, and now when your options are available, where now something else comes available, you're now housed, and you can now figure out your options from that point on.
Right, and this is why, to me, the only solution to be able to solve this within 2 years is to go complete modularization to building a modular house or a modular condo or whatever that will connect into. It's like you'll basically pick it up with a crane, put it into place on a modular metal steel frame, slide it into place, lock it in, hook it up. There you go. And if the thing were to burn down, it'll just burn itself down, and that'll be it, right? And then you just pull it out, replace it if you have to, and put a new one in. And it'd be a lot simpler if we could get to modularization to the housing situation, because we could go and solve this once we've got the modules being built, right? All it would take is just building the frames and building these buildings up 5-10 stories or whatever. There you go, pop into place, put these modules in. You got your elevators, you got your stairs. There you go. You got your frame building, and then you're in. That's it. It's not hard to solve problems if we're willing to go the distance. And the problem is we don't have politicians that are willing to go the distance. They only want to go so far, and they go, oh, we can't do this. We're stepping on somebody else's territory. We're stepping on somebody else's feelings. We're stepping on this, that, or whatever rules or regulations. You know what? In a national emergency, guess what? All the rules and regulations need to be put aside. And that's where we're at. We're at a national emergency. Yep. And our governments have progressively let this happen. Not just the Liberals. It's the Conservatives, Liberals, and Conservatives back and forth.
Do the blame game back and forth, and then
nothing. They're both equally as guilty, right?
All levels.
Yeah,
and I've phoned
every level.
I've phoned every party leader, every major party. I've even phoned Jugmeat, and I've said, every single one of you, you're arguing, but you're all off base. None of you are getting what's happening. This is an emergency. Yep. I've called Trudeau, I've called Freeland, I've called Jugmeat, I've called Sean Fraser, I've called everybody, and I'm like, your talking points and the things that you're putting through they're okay, but they're still you're completely out of touch with the reality on the ground.
Yeah,
this is the reality.
Yeah. Well, man,
what are your thoughts on that, Dan?
Deal with this.
Yeah, Dan had his hand up earlier, so.
Yeah. Dan, what are your thoughts about the modular?
I mean, if properties were utilized properly, obviously we could take care of at least half the issues, right? Here in Ontario, it's half and half, right? We got greedy homeowners that don't want to give it up for the people in need. And then we also have stalwarts that aren't building crap. I agree with MJ. The quickest way to do it is modular. Like it's quick to put up. It's cheaper, obviously. And that would actually service, there was somebody mentioning it earlier about single folks. That would service a lot of single folks. Like here in Toronto, we actually did declare homelessness an emergency already. But as somebody said earlier, it has to go nationwide or it's never going to work. It just won't happen.
Yeah, like for instance, Tom knows because he's in Victoria here. Like Tom, down on thanks on that, Dan. I'll come back to you in a little bit on that. But like on Yates Street, Tom, have you seen that the modular housing? It almost looks like an apartment building. I saw getting like cranes coming in and they were stacking them, and then they put all the outside of it, makes it like a brand new apartment building.
Is it like a train car almost?
Where on Yates is that?
And you can't tell the difference. You
I'm trying to think of where that is. But
just down from the fire hall.
Right, yeah, because there's a bunch of new buildings
On
going
the same
on.
Well, and there's so many prefab companies too in Canada. Like I was doing my research, and there's just tons of them. And a lot of them would be ready to go. I mean, they're doing. I'm sure many of them could scale up really quickly if they had the need.
That the medical building. There's a professional
building.
building.
Kitty corner from what used to be a dealership. I used to clean
that
dealership.
From there,
but there's that one there, and there's a few other ones.
It's by that professional building. There's a medical professional building. It's just up the road from there on the same side. Yeah. And so I mean that goes to show how quickly it was done. Like we watched it and I'm thinking, wow, like it was done within not even 2 months. It was up and going.
Well, like for example, like the idea of the modular idea that I'm talking about here is you build the frame, right? Mm-hmm. And once you've got the frame put in, all you're doing is just putting all the units into place, just sliding them into place, lock them into place, and there you go. And they'd be built over here. Well, the frames would be put in the location, and once you have the frames in the location, all you're doing is just sliding things into place and hooking it all up, and there you go. And if we go with the new 21st century design of buildings, where we do LED lighting in the ceilings, instead of, because that there will lower your power bill, but and we go with the new levels of technology that are already being explored, it would lower people's cost of living even further. I mean, a lot of people don't understand, the costs of these buildings could be even lowered because the only major plugs you would ever need for 220 would be your washer, your dryer, and your stove, and you need your fridge. But here's the thing: is you've already got 12-volt fridges, right? That go in your campers that are full size, right? A lot of people don't realize. So the new technology is power over Ethernet, right? And that's the idea of we run 48 volts with 115 watts max, and most things running DC aren't using that much in the way of voltage. A lot of people don't realize that. Right.
Here's a part for Neil to put in on his little blooper part. Yeah. Here's the one for about tiny homes. Yeah. Listen to this. Build it. PWD can live in a building.
Well, I mean,
so does size matter or what?
Size matter.
I mean, I figured 20 by 40 would be big enough for most people. I mean, and 20 by 40. I'm not sure. Can't remember what the square footage
I've seen some innovative tiny homes built with universal design for people who have built them for like their parent that still wants to be independent, but they want to put them on their property or whatever. And and they're completely, wheelchair accessible and walker accessible or whatever. And I mean, the one place I looked at, I mean, they had a deck that if they wanted to move it, they just slide the deck and the guard under it, but they can expand it in different ways. It was amazing. And so it's I've been pushing for this. Like there's just so many solutions, like you said, and there's even companies doing modular tiny homes. And I've talked to a couple. I said, have you looked at doing them with universal design? This is why. And they've been very interested and have come back and say, you know what, we're going to look into that, because it's it's not just about disability, it's about aging in place, but it's also about economics. Like they're even building, a lot of companies are even moving to sustainable green building materials as well as energy efficiencies and
we truly have to look at the, let's put it this way. I mean, the way we build our houses. I mean, I watched this guy called his Matt Farrell. He has a YouTube channel called Undecided with Matt Farrell, and and he talks about all this green energy, he talks about all this technology, the insulation, all the rest of this stuff. And he recently did a video in the last week or so about how poorly we design our houses in North America, and it's deliberately designed this way, right? Mm-hmm. And if we actually design them to the latest standard, right, our energy efficiency would be absolutely perfect in comparison to what we have now. I mean, our costs to go and heat the places would go down, and you could, operate with a lot less power all the way around. And this is the problem with our designs. And this is where, when I'm talking about modular designs, is you would have to include all of this latest technology, because there's no way to get around it, because the amount of power that it costs to go and, that we waste. Actually waste.
Well, and there's companies already doing it, MJ.
Right.
Yeah.
It's they've got ceiling fans and light fixtures that already operate using power over Ethernet. Right. I was looking this up a while back. There's a motel down the States where they converted all the lights in the place to power over Ethernet for the entire place. The town went out and had no power one day, and they had power. Why? Because it cost them like a heck of a lot less to go and power the place. And, when we take a look at all the technology that we currently have, our televisions, our computer monitors, our laptops, all of these technology, our phones, all go, it's like we plug it into the wall to a 120 outlet when we could be just directly plugging it into a power or Ethernet connection. And there you go.
We got wireless charging now. I mean, how long is it before we can do everything wirelessly, like Tesla was looking at? Like,
I just worry that if you have everything by internet, then it's going to be like Google. You're going to say, turn off the lights, and Google will say, sorry, I'm not going to do that right now.
Well, no, you can have them set up so it's an independent to your house, right? So it's not connected to the internet. So it's like
not the greater internet.
Like that line from was it the year 2001 where you
open the pod bay doors, Hal?
Yeah, like he says, and then sorry Dave, I can't do that.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, well, no, the idea is, I'm still thinking that I definitely don't want to connect it to the internet or being a smart system. I'm not for that idea. I'm for having the technology available to be controlled directly at home, and you have just your one system. You have the amount of power we'd use would be about 30% less, or 40% less than what we currently use right now. And the problem people don't understand is even in the designs we currently have, the amount of waste of power going from AC to DC or DC to AC to DC again, or whichever it is in each case, is there's a lot of waste, right? And with the advent of new technologies and new ideas, in dealing with the housing problem, I think that we should go and build forward instead of building backwards.
Well, and I want to talk, like, when you're talking about technology, I don't know if anybody here knows Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil he's a futurist, and I remember, like, there was this old I'm trying to remember the name of the show.
Great Scott.
But he was on, it was black and white when he was on it. He was like a 17-year-old kid, and everything was still in black and white, and his thing, because they had to guess what it was, and what it was is he had trained a computer, like, this is black and white television. He had trained a computer to compose music independently of human input. And he went on to design an algorithm before anybody even knew what an algorithm was, an algorithm machine where he would put in data, and he would predict when we would achieve certain technologies. And a lot of people were like, oh, it's just Ray for a long time. And 20 years later, all those same people were like, you know what? We thought he was nuts, and everything that he predicted was down to the year, and sometimes even closer. And anyway, he often, there's a great documentary called what was it called? I'm trying to remember. It was he talks about the singularity a lot. And I'll remember that name when I stop talking about it. But he talks in there about how technology is not, most people when they're predicting technology, they're looking at it as linear growth, but it's actual exponential growth. Every time we make a technological advancement, it actually speeds up the time between the next technological advancement to the point where we get to the singularity. It's so right now technology is expanding. Most people don't even understand the kind of technology we have right now. It's advancing so fast that they can't produce it on a mass scale as fast as their
can't keep up with their own
stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at, I mean, as a similar thing. I mean, it's just about a movie. I mean, we all know about Back to the Future. Now, you know how that was made many years ago, but the idea wasn't there about futuristic stuff. And they mentioned the year. Well, that year's already gone by now. I mean, well, let's just punch in the
Cubs did win.
Yeah, but I mean the producer was just brilliant. I mean, when they came up with that idea, right? I mean, Michael J. Fox, he made the movie. I mean, he was, but I mean, just the ideas. Me personally, I love part 2. I think part 2 was my ultimate.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying part 3 wasn't good, but I mean, part 2 was really good.
No, it was I agree with you. I think that was the best of the 3.
Gigawatt to power.
See, and this is where, when we take a look at all the technology that we're talking about that they're proposing, and it's like electric cars and all the rest of this stuff, and and futuristic housing, and yada,
we already have flying cars, for crying out loud.
Oh, I know.
Well,
wow.
I know.
Viable ones.
And
I want
self-driving
flying
and
Tesla.
yeah.
I fly Teslas. I mean,
I think with flying cars, we'll have to get more of the AI just allowing it to do stuff, because I just get really scared.
Well, actually,
I was in air cadets, and there was like all these things you had to learn. Like when you get to this, you have to call tower and all this stuff. I just picture people like,
When we flying politicians and they start coming in. What did you say? Whoa, hey, where did you come from?
I mean, I have an idea about having a catapult, so we launch them across Niagara Falls. Them along with certain kinds of criminals we don't want anymore. I mean, and I'm just saying,
malfunction. Well, whoops. Oh, it wasn't.
Then we'll get. See if we can launch them to Horseshoe Falls on the other side, and we'll see if the Americans can go build a big bat where they can take a swing.
Batter up.
like a boomerang.
Let's
catch an American and bring them over. No,
let's just launch a big Squid Game.
Launch
a Squid Game.
But to solving these problems, when it comes to solving these problems, I mean, the politicians tend to sit here and think, oh, we got to go and do something. Yes. The only thing I think the politicians need to start doing is getting themselves out of the way. That's the biggest problem, is they keep putting themselves in the way and thinking, I have a solution. No.
Well, them and the NIMBYs. The NIMBYs are driving me nuts. We need to legislate away NIMBYism.
Yeah, because
that I think the politicians could do. I'm okay with them doing that.
The old saying
15-minute cities for them.
When we keep hearing the old saying is, there's more to do. What they're basically saying, the politicians are saying, when they say there's more to do, means they're kicking the can down the road. They don't want to deal with it. Yeah, basically.
See, I'm at that.
They know what the real truth is, but we don't want to deal with it right now.
See, and this is the problem I have with all the parties, and I mean, from across all the spectrums, is they all play the NIMBY game with political ideas they don't like. They all play, no, it's too big of a problem. We can't solve that. It's too big, right? And then they play the, we're going to have to deal with it in the future. We just don't have the money. But it's like.
But they magically come up with money
with 18 million to give to Ukraine. Yes. Exactly, right?
That's what I mean. It's
like if you can conjure money out of nothing for that, why can't you conjure money out of something else for the solution? And
yeah, like no government looks at like a weapon system and goes, "That costs how much? Oh, we can't do it then." Like you look at like
Yeah, exactly.
like all the stuff
Right.
I'm talking
Canada,
about,
let's
Roundtableism and all that sort of stuff. The money flowing up to these guys that own everything. It's like, well, there's your question of how do you pay for it? Get it back from them. Use things like land value tax, financial transaction taxes, other things like that, and put the money back into the people and.
Yeah.
That can actually
Well,
drive
if you
some of
close-
the technological things
If you
that can
close
happen.
the loopholes at the top for the richest, you've got multi-billionaires
Yeah.
that have all these tax loopholes and ways to get their money out of the country. And if they actually tax them at the rate that they're taxing people at the bottom rung, then they would pay for that would pay for everything. And I'm not saying don't tax people lower, but if they just tax them at just the same rate.
Well, I mean, my thing is this: is if they got rid of all the tax loopholes across it for everybody equally, right? And just said, okay, my solution is the first $15,000 of your income is tax free. After that, it's all taxed at 15%. There's no way around it. Every piece of income is taxed. You win the lottery, it's taxed. You sell a house, for example, it could be taxed, so on and so forth. I mean, the bottom line is if you're going to be making money, if you're going to be selling something, you're going to be doing business, 15% bottom line. Solve the problem by getting rid of the problem of having people need to be there, right? To go and say, oh, well, that tax deduction over there, blah, blah, blah. No, that's a waste of time. That's a waste of tax dollars to have somebody sit here and goof off on all that. And I'm one of these. I'm libertarian when it comes to government, okay? And to me, I want a libertarian solution of saying, here's the money, take it or leave it. If you don't,
and I want to say something about that. People have demonized. We've had a takeover of very, very ultra right libertarianism, but libertarianism actually there is even left. Like it's a huge spectrum. And
Philippe on Paris, who's a left libertarian.
Like you can be everywhere on the political spectrum within libertarianism, and for those people that don't understand that,
right?
Right. You look at our provincial government. Like, I mean, like in BC, we have an NDP government, right? I mean, they've got in the power. They've been in there for 7 years now. Manitoba just got a new NDP government too. And some people say, well, they're all NDP. I mean, which is great, but it's the narrative. Like the party has to really focus on the citizens, and when there's something not quite right, it's like saying, well, what are we doing wrong that maybe we can learn from our mistakes, right? And of course, you get the opposition party. Oh, how dare you overspend? I mean,
and then they overspend on nothing.
Yeah,
they overspend and nobody that should benefits.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I mean, it's not the spending that's the problem; it's what you spend it on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Government should be spending. It's not like
citizens invest in your
citizens. Let the road just go.
Well, to me, if you invest in the citizens will spend the money with the corporations. And if they say, you know what, this amount of money that I'm getting from the government is nice, but I'd like to do something for myself, and actually now I can afford to go and start my own business, so I can afford to go and I want to go and be a painter, or I want to be a poet or an artist. I want to do something that I really like, and that would give people opportunity. And the problem we have is society has been beating culture in a backwards direction, and culture has been destroyed, and it's being destroyed of what we've known in Canada. And the problem I have is when it comes to solving the problems, getting the government out of the way and allowing the people to figure it out, like getting the instead of legislating this or that, or passing a law that says that, if you have hurt feelings you could be charged. I mean, let the people solve the problems, let the people come to the solutions, and maybe society would get better and go, oh, well, I didn't know that. I learned something today. And instead of creating, where these are. And to me, I'm for small government as much as possible, and for them only doing what we truly need them to do. Like we have public health care. Well, that's where they're at. Let's fix the healthcare problem forthwith. Let's stop playing games with it. Let's stop goofing off with education. Let's get these kids to be actually educated in things that matter instead of sending them out in the world being absolutely useless. Right?
Well, I mean, not even there's kids that don't even, you know, the latest
spell.
they don't even know how to cook for themselves or you know, which is just blows my mind. Yeah. And we have but I agree, and I was gonna say, you know, like I'm with you, MJ. Like I think you're right. It's a matter of, you know, it's investing in people and what people need, and you know what? When I was a single mom, and I'd get daycare, but I often couldn't find work within the daycare. But you know what I did? I was I was collecting a welfare check, but I was also doing as much as 80 hours a week of volunteer work for an organization that I was really passionate about the cause. And so this idea that you're giving somebody something they're not doing, most of the volunteer work and unpaid labor in this country is done by people that are collecting and without that are collecting social supports, and without us,
I did
a lot of those places wouldn't survive.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of these things that currently exist that are in place to help people that are disabled or poor or disadvantaged those jobs would eventually go away as well, right? You know, and unfortunately, this is, you know, in solving problems, you know, things, you know, jobs end up being sacrificed. Just like when we went from horse and buggy to the car, the poop shovelers, you know, lost their jobs. That's just the way it happened, right? They had to go and get retrained and move on to something else.
Yeah.
So in society, you know, we need to move forward. That's just where it's at.
We have
go ahead, Neil.
We have Alan on the call now.
Yeah, we need to let Alan talk.
Alan joined in.
Oh,
He's got
and Alan, you missed the tiny home segment. You came on just after.
And I saw his. He had a giant reflector for. You must have been.
Yeah, it was like.
I saw that.
Yeah, that didn't work at all.
Yeah.
That was the old hook off the stage.
There you go. Yeah. I thought you were taking pictures of yourself there for a while.
You can buy a backdrop stand that is the same material. It's just a huge rectangle. This is more. I was trying to use my deflector, which I would usually have a model hold, where I was doing a headshot. So light came back at her. I can't really show you, but one side's gold and one side's silver.
Can you raise your camera a little bit, Ellen? Yeah. Just a little bit. Yeah.
There you are. Yeah, there you go.
A bounce. That's a bounce. Yeah.
It's like more.
There we go. And
from filmmaking, it's called a bounce. So like light.
Higher than my desk. My desk is a bunch
of. It's like Magic TV, you know.
So sometimes my Mac will slide back on its hinge again.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we were talking about tiny homes there, Alan, and how efficient they would be to build them in mass production, how quickly it is just stack, boom, boom, done. You throw some stairs, elevator in there, a lot of bing.
I think one of the things that we have an opportunity as PWD to do is, now that the NDP have got a foothold in Manitoba, is to pressure them into doing what the Liberals did in Ontario, which is create a UBI, even if it's a pilot.
Yeah.
That pressure, and if you can get another province to do it and another province to do it, even just one province doing it and it being a success story, will put pressure on the Conservative governments who don't want to lose their popularity. And people go, well, if they're going to do a UBI in Manitoba for 3 years.
Well, yeah, it's like they had that back in the 1970s in Manitoba.
Dauphin, Manitoba.
Yeah. Just a quick thing.
I think
the name of the movie that you all need to watch with Ray it's a documentary about Ray Kurzweil, is called The Transcendent Man.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
I looked it up. I saw The Singularity is Near, but that's the book.
Yeah, no, The Transcendent Man was the very first one, and then he's written a bunch of books, and yeah.
Transcendent Man?
The Transcendent Man.
Right.
So I think we have an opportunity, especially with this Indigenous premier, is to really push some
Or just transcend it.
Right.
is to really hammer into a UBI needs to happen as AI really gets aggressive.
Yeah, well, that's what grassroots movement is, right? Like, it reminds me of that. Remember that old '70s shampoo commercial where it says, "I told 2 friends, and I told 2 friends, and so on, and so on, and so on." You know.
For that, and it kind of goes to another good documentary too. It's called Homeless in Vancouver, and it was going back a few years now. But as a guy who lived in his motorhome, he couldn't afford to high rent, so he lived in his motorhome. But then he was fortunate enough that he relocated for months into Mexico because the weather was good. He said at his age it was hard, right? It was hard because of so much moisture on the coast, and it was just went right through him, right? So he went there, and that doesn't work for everybody. It is a really good documentary, but it kind of stems back to what we talked about before, 1986, how everything evolved at that point. Expo came, and congratulations and all this, and welcome the world, and the SkyTrain got put in, and it's still amazing. I mean, can't wait to get built out to way up the valley. It'd be awesome, But how things evolved from that point on, right? Where capitalism really blossomed, right? All that financialization over time, because the world kept on coming. Not saying don't come, but we need the housing for people, citizens here too. And when we're not providing the resources and the housing to people, what do we got?
Well, I think the other thing we need to look at is, and this does connect to the tiny home community. With
Screen machine.
So,
I remember that. Yeah.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
if you guys want to a UBI, then create some kind of provincial program that allows a disabled person or a low-income person to get a tiny home, or to mortgage a tiny home, where the amount they have to live on is paid by
like a rent to own, you mean?
Just as if they were paying for an apartment directly.
Yeah, but rent to own though, in a sense, yeah.
Yeah, rent to own, where because in 10 years,
Sonia's idea.
Look at it really is. I mean, I was in Toronto 10 years ago, and it feels like it was like yesterday. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's not a long time, and it feels like a long time, but it really, if you're in your 40s or 50s, by the time you're 60, your tiny home is yours.
Mm-hmm.
And if they could take some of their land and designate it within the bus system, you might have 2 or 3 buses to get downtown, but at least you could take them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's exactly having accessible transit to go along with that tiny home is so important.
Instant Captaincy is a good example. Scott Street, which I used to take to and from the work, doesn't go down to the downtown terminal at all. It goes to a long loops, right? So even if the tiny home communities were on a loop like that, where you had to go to the mall, if you wanted to get downtown, you had to transfer at that loop. I don't know what they call it. That transport point. They have a transfer point.
You mean technology?
Yeah, but I mean, I think certain cities have.
Well,
destinations
with
where not every bus.
flying cars, buses will be obsolete.
Yeah.
Not every
Transporter
bus,
number 1, please.
not every bus they run goes to downtown
Flying buses.
terminal. Right, some of them are on a loops, a transfer point. So if you had land that was like maybe 20 minutes from downtown core with tiny homes on it, and in order to get downtown to do your banking or to get to, you had to go to the mall anyway.
Yeah, almost reminds me of like George Jetson. Remember the Jetsons? Yeah, like the landing path. And he's like he walks on the platform right under the suitcase.
Anyway,
there's a honeymoon season with this new NDP in Manitoba, and I think it's a real opportunity for people with disabilities and people who are the gay community or the LGBT community to really push for some kind of housing solution. And I think the tiny home one or a UBI platform could be the way to go, because if you get one province who's really about affordability to pressure the other provinces who are backbenching it, the other provinces are not going to look very good, and their popularity will, the party will go down even further. So Doug, in interaction, even though Doug Ford's popularity is already low, I mean, he could plummet if the premier of Manitoba said, we're starting a UBI starting in the new year of 2024, and it's going to run for 3 years, and 10,000 people are eligible from various cities within the province, and it's up and running, and we have literally signed a deal already. It's happening. People will be picked out of a lottery, whatever.
Yeah, because I think isn't there something going on in PEI right now? I think there's a pilot, isn't there? Like a basic income.
There's I believe it's there's support for a pilot.
Yeah, or support for
there's I just saw this recently. They have something going right now, which is a little bit better than normal welfare, but it's not basic income yet. But they also have an all-party consensus on wanting to do a basic income demonstration in PEI, and they're waiting for the federal government to get on board. There's also some interest in BC. But I ran into Rob Canu's work back when he was a journalist with CBC, and he was a former hip hop artist. And he did I did a little thing, but one of the podcasts from before, but he did a thing called Eight Fire, where it was talking about residential schools, and he was like advocating for people to stop saying former students and instead saying survivors of residential schools. And so he's always been very like that issue, but other issues he's been very progressive and really good speaker. And it would be great to kind of like push him in the he's got Leah Gazan right in his province with him. So and he's got Dauphin, and he's got Evelyn Forget, in working at the Winnipeg hospital, teaching part of the hospital. So yeah, he's in a perfect location. So yeah, connecting him with basic income would be amazing.
We have a question
and who
from
was that
chat.
again? I missed that. I got distracted by an article about the Canadian disability benefit, but
you mentioned Neil, there was a comment or something.
There's a comment from chat, a question from chat. It's from Mean Robot, and Mean Robot says, when's Bill C-22 happening? So Bill C-22 is referencing Canada Disability Benefit. And so that's the question, is when is Canada's disability benefit happening?
Well,
another 12 months?
Another 18 months from now.
Yeah, probably.
No, well, 12 now. I think it's closer to
24.
See, it's amazing how long it takes them to go and goof off on writing a bill to solve a problem.
I know.
I mean, to me, it's like I could go, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm one of these people that actually gets the legislative nonsense and the bureaucracy that's built. I read this stuff, right? Exactly. Me too. Yeah. So it's like we read this stuff, and it's like I go, I could write something better than this crap, right? I could do better. It's like, who writes this garbage? And
I've seen resolutions at party convention that were written better than this piece of I know.
Yeah, exactly. You're sitting here going, who writes this? And it's like,
I remember, MJ, when I was under an executive, my gosh, we had a resolution done within like 3 minutes. boom, done, bang, signed off. Right to our Treasury Department. Okay, yeah, no, we like the idea. Brent, done. Okay, and it goes off to the budgetary.
Exactly. You know, I mean, this is where solving this problem between housing and giving people money to be able to go and get their lives together. I mean, to me, one of these things is we've created all these obstacles for people that get in the way, and it's like you get behind on child support, for example, you lose your driver's license. That's really helpful to solve the problem. That just makes the problem worse, right?
Yeah, exactly, because then they can't get a job, get to their job.
Exactly. So now,
child support.
so it's like how, to me. So one of the things when I look at UBI, I look at the cost that the amount of money people waste, and the amount of money that we're wasting administrating courts over worrying about who gets child support. And let's say, my opinion, say let's throw $4,000 at the kid and say, well, you can pay for the $4,000 and your elementary school and your high school and your college out of this money too, and your life and all the rest of this stuff, right? Your parents will pay for your schooling, right, or whatever. Instead of us dealing out of the property taxes, it goes over here.
Yeah.
Like there's so many goofy things that we can do.
Here's the other problem too, is that governments are so stuck in that one mode where it's always worked that way. And I'll give you a quick example, and then I go over to Utah. I remember under executive. Now you guys are going to find this funny. Well, I said, I've got a resolution. Oh, okay. And so you put your hand up to speak, right? It's like, you wait to be speaking. So I put my hand up. Yeah, go ahead, Brent. So I come to with an idea, because we'd have, under executive, they'd have coffee and tea and cookies out there and some little donuts. And I said, well, you know what? I've come to an idea here. What? Hey, why don't we just go to Tim Hortons and I can get a whole canister, and we could do things cheaper than the way they were doing it. But we've always done it this way. I go, so hey, that's his idea.
How's that work?
I said, yeah, but it's going to be cheaper. You can get more value for your dollar. Oh, it doesn't work. Are you worried more about the dollar amount? I go, yeah, hell yeah. You get more bang for your buck. And then, but now they had to debate it. Get this. They had to debate a coffee canister. Because it was going to be break down the metals within it. It's going to break down. Is it plastic or is it aluminum? I said, oh, for God's sake. And then we had the former former MLA who was actually on there, and he got up and he says, and he actually interrupted me, and he goes, Brent, can I say something? I go, you know what? I said to everybody, because normally we're supposed to be all so political, taking our turns. I said, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with my conversation. Go ahead, Leonard. He goes, okay, everybody, do we all have to play pissy potty here? I thought, potty and debate about a freaking canister. He says, John, don't get one.
Well, I mean, this is the problem. Is there's too many people figures they need to be chiefs, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I want my opinion. My opinion is better than your opinion. I don't like you because, or I don't like your opinion because, the way you talked to me 3 days ago in the last conversation we had. I mean, the amount of, I know, like literally the amount.
You're too passionate and you're interrupt. Yeah.
I got to tell you, I mean, when I sit here and I listen to people make excuses, it's just like you get that point where you just want to reach out and touch someone,
Why am I still your producer, Brent? Why aren't we like this?
Solving problems does not.
I just wanted to give them a little shove off the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Solving problems does not have to be complex.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if we can put aside our personal beliefs of that divide us and say, okay, this is a common interest of humanity and a common interest to solve things for everybody equally, then why can't we just get along and say, let's just solve it? Right? It's not a political issue. It's like homelessness is beyond politics. And that's a fact.
It's a human right. You're right.
Exactly.
And having people having their basic human rights met. I mean, we're sitting there and we're supposed to be this pillar in Canada, beacon of human rights. And we're always talking to other people about their human rights violations, but they can't solve the basic human rights of just making sure people have a home and can have enough food. Like, for crying out loud,
gosh, God forbid,
Well, exactly. If you could go, it's like, for example, these modular buildings I talk about, if you could buy that and you just pay, for example, a strata fee or whatever fee, right, a minor fee, you wouldn't be paying an arm and a leg, right? Because there's nothing to deal with in the building. It's just a structure and your building's put in. And the simplification of solving these problems comes back to my idea of getting your ego out of the way. And that's the biggest thing is, I'm more important than you because I have a title. No, my idea is better than yours because I have a title. It's like you're a female and your opinion is less than mine. I've heard that.
I have letters beside my name, so I'm smarter than you.
Yeah, I gotta bring in this guy, David Graver of Bullshit Jobs. He had a perfect line on this where it's got like, like the worst thing you can, like when it comes to technology, it's like the worst thing you can do is have a bunch of people that are talented, whatever, and make it so that they have to make reports and all this stuff so that they can get the work done and they have to all that stuff. If you just if you give them the money and get out of their way, then they can do the work.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly. It's like, to me, it's like the whole welfare and disability system. It's like, how much does it cost to administrate our disability in British Columbia? I've been told that it's 2 to 3 times what we get a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's the thing on that one, MJ, is the and I'll get Dan's take on this because I was just thinking, and I'm glad you must have been reading my mind. I was just thinking about the rates. I was thinking of this shelter rate, and that'll be we'll really focus on the Roundtable 4 on the next time, unless we have time today to do it, but which not if we'll continue on the next one. But just kind of getting with that about the rates. I mean. Puts less strain on the healthcare system if you give people more money. So that money now gets pulled into that system. But we're getting rid of the shelter. The shelter, I know that just drives Cassandra batty when I mention that.
Well, it just drives me nuts that they still, and it's an NDP government. Even the excuse about giving you more money, it's our computer system can't handle giving you more money. Like, really?
And we've given you
like, what happened when you were delivering it by check?
This is a wall right here.
Because our computer system can't handle big payouts.
And we broke the transit pass computer too. Sorry.
But don't worry.
And this is right. And this is why, to me, you've already got the CRA website built, right?
Yeah.
You're already given a GST credit every quarter.
Yes.
Now broken.
Right. So if they can do that every quarter, then why can't they change it to go and say, take that and change it from GST to being UBI every month, right?
Well, and I've been saying,
or better, give me that money every quarter. So
with the DERB, everybody's concerned about clawbacks, and I'm like, well, they delivered the grocery repaid, and they delivered this and that all through the GST system, so it wouldn't get clawed back.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So why can't we do that?
Why can't they do that with DERB, or why can't
all they have to do
with UBI?
With Floyd, there's a point Floyd Marinescu made, which is that there's almost two movements when it comes to talking about UBI versus GLBI and all that stuff. Is it UBI, Peter Barnes wrote about this too, where you could have a UBI which is based on so much capitalism has changed completely. That's one of the most common threads I hear from Guy Standing to Yanis Varoufakis to anybody, is that it's completely different, and so much of it is about ownership, not free market and jobs and all that stuff. So then make everyone co-owner. Use it so that the UBI, like Yanis Varoufakis is talking about, everyone gets that little dividend. Right, that raises the floor for everyone. Now your GLBI has less work to do. Now
that sounds like communism.
You put that on. You put that on top.
It's not communism.
Way below.
No, I know it isn't, but that's the line we get when we talk about what he's talking about.
It's so crazy because literally the people I know more capitalists who are for basic income than socialists who are. It's like Yanis, Charles Fourier. Here's the thing. John Sanderson. Hey, John. Meanwhile, you got Richard Branson, you got Elon Musk, you got all these guys across the board.
Well, these are tech guys, though. These are the guys that are paying for this great technology, so they see it. They see how work could become obsolete, and that there's a need.
That's why they know.
Yeah, exactly.
What's funny also is when I mentioned Milton Friedman, that's why you get people like a certain person who was on Neil and Brent's podcast a little while ago, who I disagree. I agree with everything that she said, except for what she said about basic income. And it's she and others come at it from that left-wing attack on basic income, which is, it's Milton Friedman, they're going to wipe everything else out. And it's like,
Yeah.
We don't have to set that as the rule.
I
We can
know,
make the
I
rules
know.
any way we want. We already have neoliberalism, for Christ's
Well, I mean, the thing is this:
But
is the financial
here's a
system
funny
is
thing, though.
based on make-believe.
Yeah.
But
It's
but
all
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
make-believe.
Oh,
It's
don't
all
even get
make-
me started, MJ.
Remember when
It's all make-believe that we agreed to.
Yeah, but remember
Yeah.
Carla Quantrill had said, I don't know how many provinces have people with disabilities, how to pay it out. All you do is contact the finance minister to each province, give me a printout of all the people, all the payouts.
We all get a T007 every year, and
Yeah.
it's filed with the CRA for
That's right,
crying
the
out
CRA.
loud.
It's going to take a long
Exactly.
time. Then we better get on it right now.
Well, exactly. How
Oh,
hard is it to solve a problem? It's not. It's
Yeah.
just
That just pissed. Yeah, I'm sorry
I know,
for interrupting,
no.
but it just pissed
Yeah.
me off because we
I
all
know.
file taxes to get benefits, and
Yeah.
the federal government tracks
Yeah.
it all,
Maybe
whether
they
it's CPP
Not
or
that.
provincial, and you're or even private, you have
Yeah.
to pay taxes, and you can't figure out how many people. Like, come on.
maybe
Exactly.
they should
It's like-
maybe they should come up with a extra expert panel to study it for 12 months to figure out how do T007s work. I forget. Let's study it more.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the problem with all of this: is these people need to justify their existence for their job, and this is the truth of the matter: is they need to justify their existence. And to me, government should only be there and need to be in session for when we truly need them to be there and be in session to deal with an issue. Otherwise, they should be meeting once a year, as the Constitution Act says, and we shouldn't have to hear from them.
Well, they should
Right?
be working on the issues instead of.
Right.
I mean, I
Exactly.
love question period, but they should be.
Oh.
I hate it's an act.
It's become this thing where they put on a show and they're not actually getting to the meat of things
Like-
and doing the work on the legislation.
Exactly.
It's just them lobbing at each other, and neither of them
Yeah.
actually listening to anything
Yeah.
anyway. It's just
It's
I
like,
can't. I
what?
can't. I was
It's
wanting to
destroyed.
listen
Yeah.
to it
See,
before
my
because
problem is,
yeah.
it's like if I was elected, I would probably be thrown out of the House of Commons on a daily basis, because I would be vulgarly rude to these people, because frankly, I would just sit there. These people act like this dumpster fire is entertainment for yourselves because you're bored and you're not interested in solving problems. And you know, what type of morons do you think take people are for sitting at home and listening to this crap? I mean,
I would be able to
How does it help with polarization?
I feel like you're in my head, MJ. Like I literally, because I've told
I
my
hate government.
MPs and MLAs, I don't know how you maintain your composure and don't, because I would be thrown out
yeah.
a million.
I just think
exactly.
I'd be
polarization?
sanctioned by the speaker like every hour. You know what I mean?
Do you guys do they seriously walk out of that chamber and go, we got paid for this? That makes sense. Like, I mean, how does this help with the polarization in the country?
I
When
know.
you guys are like, you're an idiot. You're like, oh.
See, I'd be walking out of the legislature and just walking just outside the doors, closing the doors, and just yelling, "These people are a bunch of idiots!"
I'd be
Anyways,
shouting pink unicorns. Ah!
The problem, see, because you can say anything
Go back to bus pass.
Yeah.
in their system.
Straight face, you know.
You can say whatever you want outside the House of Commons or the floor of the House of Commons. Once you're inside, you're held accountable for what you say. So you can
Well, no, that's not true, because you can say things inside the House of Commons that they cannot sue you for, that if you speak outside,
yes,
they
that's
can
part of-
sue
yeah.
you for.
right.
Yeah.
It's parliamentary
They're
privilege.
protected.
Yeah, parliamentary
yes, you can-
privilege, but
Yes, you
but I
can
get
call
you.
people. You can call people names on Parliament before, and you know, you'll get sanctioned for it. But I guarantee it. You know,
You
it'll
can
be part of the
defame
record.
them. They're
Yeah, it's legal to defame them on the
yeah.
House.
That reminds me of.
But not outside the door.
Go ahead, Neil.
Sorry, that reminds me of Lethal Weapon. Remember that? I have diplomatic immunity. Remember that line from
Yes.
Lethal Weapon?
Yeah.
It's just been revoked. Bang.
See, you know, and this is where the problem.
Over to down after when you're done, MJ. Yeah.
See, and this is where, to me, when I look at government, I mean, all they want you to do is solve the problem and get out of the way. right? It's like the roads shouldn't be having potholes in them every 50 meters or every 50 feet or every 5 feet. There should be perfect roads all the time. They shouldn't be built to the lowest qualified standards. They should be built to the highest exacting standards so we don't have to spend more tax dollars, right? Because there's enough roads in British Columbia that we could have road gangs going from every corner of this province to fix roads year round, right? There's ways to solve problems. We don't want to solve problems. Roads is one of them. Income assistance is another. Housing is another. Medical, the healthcare system is another. They just keep going and offering paltry solutions that don't actually solve problems. And this is where it's like, this is where, like when they were like in the States, they were going to repeal Obamacare. Okay. And they had one vote. And they told the guy to hold his vote, because we need this wedge issue, right? We need the wedge issue. Yeah. This is what they do. They keep the wedge going so they can keep justifying their existence to get elected. And that's the part that really irritates the ever-loving shit out of me. Language, just because they have to create this wedge issue instead of solving a problem.
Well, exactly. Right? Put your ideas on the floor and let the people decide if they like whose ideas they like. You don't have to make everything like, politics has become this thing where we're constantly, well, we don't want to talk about that because that'll do our votes and we can't get anything implemented unless we're in. And instead of just put all your ideas out there and people will make the decision of who's the best, which is how democracy is supposed to work.
Yeah, totally. Because it's like, well, if you vote for me, I'm going to do this. And then they get and go, oh, well, that the other government didn't, they did this.
It was more difficult than we thought.
Yeah. But that's all work together, though.
But you always talk about shareholders, Brent, and that's so true. There are the shareholders that are pulling the strings behind the scenes.
That's lobbying and all that stuff.
Lobbyists. The lobbyists.
Yeah. And then on that, I'm going to get Dan's take on this because I know you're big on RGI housing and how these rates are just so subpar and how it'll benefit people. I mean, way that the economy is going. Economy? What economy? Putting the money back into the community. I mean, the beneficial of having a basic income or a UBI or GLBI, whatever it is. I mean, disturb it good.
No, we actually do need a basic income. That's a given, right? The fact is, here in Ontario alone, the rates are actually the same as they were in 1996. We had a guy named Mike Harris come in. He tore the rat shit out of everything. Yeah. And he ripped everything in half. So definitely a UBI. But Brent, RGI units across the board for those with certain income. There's no way to play catch up with that, right? Rents are going anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000 a month. I think the two expensive cities are Vancouver and Toronto. So definitely RGI units across the board. Unfortunately, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but CDB, that should have been done years ago. We all know that, right? Yeah. And it's just the fact of the matter is, and that's my belief just from direct experience working within, I don't see this happening until 2025. We all know they're going to make it an election issue, and that's when it's going to get done.
Well, if they do, I know where I'm putting my vote, and it won't be with them. Yeah, exactly. If they dangle that carrot again, I voted. I will. Yeah, I know where I'm putting my vote.
And that's the choices we're going to have to make at that time, because we definitely need more than 20, 30, 40% getting out to vote. We need everybody to get out and vote. And show them, like MJ says, we need them to make decisions and get the bleep out of the way, because something's not working over the last 30 years. It's time for change, automatic.
Well, I agree. I mean, this is where, to me, solutions, need to be simplified. And, I mean, if, to me, I understand the rent to income idea. And I'm for home ownership and property ownership, where you can own your own home, where you don't have to pay an arm and a leg, where you can have, if you're paying $1,000 a month, you pay the place off, and you don't have to pay a couple $100 for, whatever utilities in your building. There you go, right? And to me, the problem we have is that no one wants to offer concrete solutions that actually get to the heart of the problem. They want to dangle us with pithy solutions that really just get halfway there or a quarter of the way there. And it's like, I've looked at the platforms for every single political party. And the worst part is none of these parties actually want to solve any of the real problems. They just want to dangle parts of solutions in the way. And this is the part that really, really irritates me, that none of the parties, and I've read all the platforms. I mean, it's just, I'm at the point, it's like, where do I throw my vote federally? I'm either throwing it with the Green Party or the PPC, because they're the least likely to win, because I'm at that point where it's like, I want to exercise my right to vote, but none of you are worth a dime. None of you are worth anything.
Well, I agree. I do think I have a political party that I'm not always happy with, and I didn't vote a couple times federally because I didn't like what was coming out of the leader's mouth. But at the same time, when I'm looking, what I don't want is, for 150 years since Confederation, it's been we've been playing ping pong between conservatives and liberals, and nothing is getting better. And so, I mean, some things have gotten better, but other things have gotten worse, and we're going backwards. Well, and it's like, I would give the third party the chance, because they've never had a chance. And then maybe they'll do better. If they don't, we only have 4 years before we can get rid of them. So,
Well, I mean, we're at that point where people are starting to realize that, we have governments who are just throwing the notwithstanding clause around, and they're throwing the Emergencies Act around. And it's like, they throw these acts around and people don't understand the length and depth of what these things are. And this is where it starts to scare me, when I see these parties thinking, we should just throw this around, we can use this and do this and whatever we want, against rights and freedoms of people.
But the thing about the Emergencies Act is it is not the War Measures Act. They made the Emergencies Act because the War Measures Act suspends civil liberties, whereas the Emergencies Act does not suspend individual civil liberties.
Right. So, it actually brings the Bill of Rights in, which is right. It brings, a lot of people don't understand, when you invoke that, it brought the Bill of Rights in, as well as the Charter of Rights and Freedoms at the same time. But let's get back to the topic at hand here.
But I just wanted to clarify.
To the topic here is solving this housing issue and the UBI, either UBI or GLBI, or whichever way we go. The best solution has to be, quite literally, giving people the freedom of choice to make the decisions that are best for them. Because in the current system, on disability, it's like, if I were to go and be dating a girl that wasn't on disability, I'd get cut off because she goes and makes too much money. If I'm, if I date somebody and I get married and she's not on disability, I'm completely out of luck. Or if I marry someone, or I'm dating someone, and if I'm there part-time, I could still lose my disability just because I spend part of my time there. It's like they make all these rules to find reasons to go and cut you off and to torture and abuse you for no particular reason. And I think that, quite literally, all of these rules and regulations that they've created quite literally violate the Constitution Act.
Because
legislative policies.
I've talked about, you and MJ, you and I have both talked. I talk about this all the time and people have told me all the ways we can't do it, but it's a charter, because they think you have to go through the human right. It's a charter violation. What we really need is a lawyer with some imagination, like the one that did the whole, the one that did the whole, what's her name versus, the prostitution one. That lawyer got creative and basically that he set a precedence that we can use to fight for our charter rights, saying that the legislation is actually infringes on our charter rights, and because that's what they went on, is the Supreme Court agreed and said, no, this legislation does infringe on your charter rights. So
well,
exactly. And they made a good case, and I think we could make the same case for disability.
Well, even under Article 28 of the on the Charter of Rights of Persons with Disabilities, it indicates that you're supposed to have all your basic essentials met. I mean, that includes like housing, food. I mean, everything.
Clothing.
I mean, that's just one article. There's tons of them, and I haven't memorized every single one. I know Paul. Yeah. Neil knows too. Yeah, you
Yeah,
get him going.
we
He would
want to
have
get either Paul or Margot on the show, but that's maybe one day we'll get Margot on.
I remember the one time when I had we had this Twitter space show, and I said I mentioned the name, and it was just people were like, no.
Yeah.
Like,
No, there actually is a lot of things that I do agree with Paul on. Like, it's funny that I kept saying I agree with you, Paul. I agree with you, Paul. But one of his sticking points all the time is, well, if you're not saying CRPD all the time, what are you doing? And my thing is, well, there's a lot of things you can advocate on, and I totally agree with him that CRPD is a big one.
Yeah.
But my thing is, and I think you agree, Brent, is that you got to kick down the door that's open. And that's all this show is about, or all the advocates that come on. We always talk about just kick the door that's open. And
I mean, sure, people like people they need the rights. Yeah, they need the rights met, but they also need to have a safe place they can call home. They also need the resources, and yes, the rights need to go along with it too. But so there needs to be that.
And you can't solve every problem all at once. Things are solved, unfortunately. Change happens slowly and incrementally over time, and it comes from public pressure and gaining public support, right?
Well, this is where housing and UBI can be solved both at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, gosh, if we were waiting on the CDB going, it's going to happen tomorrow. Wow, we'd be waiting and waiting.
And I understand, Cassandra, when you say that a human rights tribunal, provincially is kind of a waste of time. But I did just submit another one, just because I felt compelled, and it's like, it's like you
hold
have
accountable.
Somebody has to sit through and actually read my complaint again, and it's like, well, So that's why I did it, because I was just like, this is bullshit. I'm just gonna force you to read my complaint again.
Cold butter chicken.
I keep thinking, and I've been so busy with my own personal crisis that I've been meaning to look up the reach out to the Bedford. It was the Bedford versus Canada lawyer, and see if he would be willing to fight for the disability rights as far as disability income and stuff on the same pretext. But I've been just too, Yeah.
Well, I mean, it just goes beyond disability. It's unemployment, it's Canada pension. It's all, all these programs that they've built are very paltry indeed, So, and, it's not just us on disability here. It's also the senior citizens out there as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And they were promised a retirement. The government told them, they promised and said, we will take care of you. We were the ones we'll do it. And they lied. They broke the promise. The $600 is all these people get from basic Canada pension.
Right? I know.
In some cases, yeah.
A lot of the pensions are at $1,800 for the senior citizens. That's what all they get.
Exactly. And that's with the OAS and the GIS on top of it. And it's like, do these people? It's like, then you got to go and make this amount of income. You got to play this game, and somebody's got to adjudicate all this crap. And it's like, this is where I've come in and said, let's take all of these programs, let's put them all in one big bread basket and say, we're going to take the student loans, we're going to take the disability benefits, unemployment, WCB, or the food bank money that we normally hand out for the food banks and all the rest of this stuff, and we're going to put it all here. Because the people wouldn't need the food banks if they had the money.
Bingo.
Right? Bingo. That's the problem. Is they wouldn't need
been around
food
since
banks.
82, yeah.
Right. $10 million as a donation to the food banks to help them out, so they can help you guys out. Well, why not just help the citizens out? No, we can't do that. No.
Exactly, and that's the problem. Is to me, when I take a look at the bread basket of all the things that they throw in these paltry amounts, you start to realize, like, you got 127 billion for child benefits. That's 27 billion. About 30 to 40 for unemployment, 60 to 70 for CPP and all of that. Now, if we get rid of the administration and all of that, right, then then these people can get more money. And this is the problem we have. And, and I'm not, and I'm for taking these people and retraining them to something else or helping them find their dreams or whatever it is to get better in life. Because most people that work in these office jobs quite literally are very miserable, not happy. So in a way, I think we'd actually be saving their lives by firing them.
Here's a big thing.
Because I've worked in office jobs before, and it's not fun.
But here's a big thing. I remember at a call center I worked at many years ago, and we were pushing credit products, right? And my job was that, well, Brent, do you think you can meet this quota? I just walked out. One day I walked out. This lady was saying I had to take calls and reroute them. And the lady phoned up and she says, I'm really having a struggle, hard time making my payments. And I said, okay, can we maybe set up a payment plan? And she started telling me her life story, this and that. And I was just like, wow. And I didn't know much about basic income stuff back then. I said, but you know what? Maybe your employer can maybe negotiate a better pay wage. Well, no, I just got lost my hours. My hours were getting down, and I thought, wow. I said, oh, but the other company that I applied at, they said that they could actually streamline and push all the payments into one card. I'm like, no, don't do that. My job was to tell her, do the way that the company wanted me to tell her, and I couldn't do it. They wanted to blend it and to negotiate with her and to basically promote their product. And I said, no, listening to her story. And I guess getting back to what we're talking about now, people are struggling. And so this company, they wanted people to incur more debt. And then now they're saying that the federal government has now come with the new stats saying it's over $1 trillion in consumer debt across the country. Why? Because corporations making money off the interest rates, right?
20% compounded.
People more money. You give people more money. Now they put these other Visa, MasterCard, American Express out of business.
Yeah. Oh, I just got to I'm going to raise my hand. But it was funny. I'd never had a credit card my whole life. And then, what was it? Almost 5-7 years ago, I was like, do you want to have a credit card for my bank? I'm like, okay, sure. Got one. And isn't that interesting? It's like Guy said, they want you to be in debt because that's how they make their money. It's all of a sudden all these credit cards are popping up all over the place. It's like, wow, I qualify now.
The beauty of capitalism.
I mean, at one point, between my banks and on my credit card, I would have had over $50,000 in credit available. All right, and I'm on disability. I'm not kidding. They were going to extend me that much in debt, to put me that much in debt. And I sit here and I'm thinking, this is what UBI could solve. The government, the government can solve these problems. They can go and say, no, we're Bank of Canada, the interest rate is going to be set to 0. We're going to clamp down on all this freaking extended credit. It's going to be rolled down. We're going to roll down credit, that extended credit that people have. We're going to help them get out of debt. We're going to solve these problems and get this dealt with. But we don't have a government that wants to solve problems. And when you take a look at governments that actually did want to solve problems, every time they went to solve problems, the Western world came in to destroy them.
Or some opposition was like, no, look at that money.
Well, it's like
do that,
right?
And they demonize them. Yeah.
It's like I've been told by so many people that we need to have a compound interest rate, and I'm like, no, that we don't. We don't have to have a compounded interest rate. It's made up. We're living in a made-up society that we've all agreed to, and now we're coming to this point where people are saying, "No, I don't want to agree to this anymore. I want out." And
there was a guy.
It's like in the movie Blow, where he's talking to his dad, and his dad's like, money isn't real, son. Sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down, but it's not real.
It's all fake.
Yeah, and every time I watch that, I'm like, that's so true. It's not just true. I mean, it's literally true. It is a concept we made up for trade, but it's also true. In a I don't know, a more cerebral way as well. There's a cerebral aspect to it besides the physical aspect of it not being real.
But how bad that the housing is, the cost of renting in BC it is here in Victoria, for instance. I mean, others are just as bad, but it just blew my mind. There was a guy that was there. I see him every so often. There was a lady that they were just chit chatting. I was walking by, and I guess it had rained out really heavy this morning, and ground was all wet. But whatever, it wasn't raining when I went. And they're waiting at the bus stop, and the lady says, "Hey, yeah." So he actually did. I guess she must have thought she was talking to me, but she hadn't. I guess she goes, "You look familiar." So she starts rambling on to me. I'm like, okay. I was thinking, you lost me somewhere along the way. She goes, "Yeah, so he just got approved for a $10,000 credit increase on his card." I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, okay, well, where is this about? And then she realized after, like, she says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were so-and-so." I'm like, it's fine. But you're telling me something that I don't even know what you're talking about. But the guy applied for, I guess, for a friend. And, but go figure, he got it, and then he just lost his job. He got the phone call after he was already approved, and now he lost his job, but he's got a $10,000 increase. He went and she just went to go and lease a new lease at an apartment building because the landlord said, "Can you afford to make the rental payments?" Yeah, but he just found out he lost his job. So now he's committed to it, and he's given a whole bunch of payments. So now they said they were just going to pay the whole lease amount for the whole year, one lump sum payment on his card. Ouch. So
hello, everybody.
Surprise, surprise, right?
Yeah, we have Joseph joining us now.
Hey, Joseph.
He's
perfect timing.
He's just in time for closing comments, actually.
Yeah, exactly. We've had a wonderful
am I that far behind?
Yeah, you're that far behind, so you get the first closing comment, Joseph.
Gosh, why didn't Brent just be like, "Okay, listen, you got 5 minutes, that's good enough." So that's all you need.
It's like open stage.
Joseph, isn't that something? The guy gets a $10,000 increase. He already had 22,500 on his card, so now he's got 32,500, and now he lost his freaking job just after he got it, and meanwhile he's now paid a lease for his whole card. They said yes, he didn't want to make monthly payments on his rent, so he says, "You know what, lump sum payments." Now the landlord's happy, but now he's going to have to pay back
the credit.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I said to her, well, I said, then I looked at the time this morning. I went, oh, I got to get back. So I got to, and so, yeah. And it was like, oh.
Listen, how many Canadians really are within a $500 emergency from going insolvent? Yeah. And then you take a look at that aspect, and then you go, okay, so how many of those are ready and close to being insolvent? How many are going to come up eventually? And does a basic income actually help them to pay their bills on time, their basic bills, so that way, if you want to go and rack up $30,000 in credit card debt, it shouldn't be for your basic needs. No, that's probably, that should be your luxuries that you've racked up, and now you're going to have to pay interest on that, but not paying the interest and 20% on your basic needs.
Oh yeah, exactly, and that's exactly the point. Is that those cards?
You give them a minimum income, they'll avoid it, right? They'll avoid that insolvency. And I'm not saying the basic income is something that would help people to ride out the clock or whatever. Like, people need to understand a guaranteed livable basic income, a GLBI, not a UBI, but like a GLBI, is all about ensuring that you're not going to abuse the system later. Yeah. You're not going to pile 5 or 6 people into the same home collecting $2,400 a month or whatever, and then take that and not go to work, versus a GLBI that is geared to that, but also is watching for things like that they're not going to be sitting on the thing for 5 years without looking for work, because the numbers don't match the cost of living. It just gets you enough to get by, but not enough to be, self-reliant completely.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? Like,
well, that's where we're already at, though. That's my problem with what you're saying. That's where we are now.
Exactly, we're here. We're here now.
I'm talking about 75% of the poverty line, and there's some social assistance programs out there at 30. Okay.
Yeah, but the poverty line is not real. Okay.
The poverty line, the true poverty line.
When I say poverty line,
It's based on MBM, the official poverty line.
Look, do I support the MBM? Not really. I support the original poverty line.
Yeah.
And I don't like the words poverty line, but that's what the average Canadian associates with the line. I don't like the words poverty line, okay? But what the poverty line is, and this is my closing remark, because a lot of people misconstrued this, okay? Yeah. The poverty line, you must have a measure of who is more in poverty than the rest of Canada.
Right.
You can't just eliminate it, because the measurement is always going to be there mathematically.
Yeah.
What we're defining is what is an acceptable poverty line.
Yeah, well, to me, it's the lowest denominator. Like when you talk about your medium income, when you're at that bottom level between medium income and being in poverty, that's your poverty line.
GLBI is calculated on 75% of the poverty line, right?
Oh, okay.
It's not calculated at
for the livable wage, you mean?
But no, for the basic income, like the guaranteed basic income, not
like
the
universal median income
one.
Or the median
so
income?
It takes the median income of Canada, right?
Okay.
And then it divides it by 4 and then times 75% of that. Right. So it works out to, right now, nowadays, it would work out to 21,905. Right. And then for people with disabilities, it adds $6,000 a year.
Right.
Right.
Which,
so that'd be like
which can't be clawed back. Which can't be clawed back.
Right.
Yeah. But it isn't.
But that $500 a month is a top up in the GLBI program, right? That it adds on top. $500 a month that cannot be clawed back no matter what income you make, as long as it's underneath the maximum floor.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Right, and where I'm coming from,
I see.
What about people that can't work at all? Then they're still forced into not being able to meet.
It'll still be over 100% of what is considered below income measure.
Yeah.
As long as they raise that $6,000
I did
a year
livable
index.
wage calculations, and the average livable income in Canada, based off a living wage that was averaged out, is $45,000 a year.
Yes,
I'm at
45,000. Does that 45,000 include the cost of going to work though, and taxes?
Yeah, but so everything
just
that I have to go to work, I still have to do if I don't work.
Okay.
I still need a haircut. I still need clothes. I still need transportation.
But you're not taking.
I still need car insurance.
Yeah,
understood. But you're not taking 20% of your gross income and spending it on taxes.
Yeah,
that's my point.
We need other things besides basic income.
So,
like the amount
when they look at that number, yes, your cost of living is higher.
I know Joseph and I can get into it on this one.
I agree with your point that it's higher. I agree. But what I'm saying is that we also have to take into consideration that a working class family spends an exorbitant amount of money going to work. Me in my industry, I have to travel sometimes over 100 kilometers to go to work for the day, work for 12 hours, travel that 100 kilometers going back home because that company won't put me up in a hotel for the night. And I have to pay all that transportation and that time, and that's worth $100 a day to me.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but here's the thing. So when you calculate it, the average at 45, and then you add on the 40% for living with a disability, and then you subtract the average amount of taxes and deductions that you get off of that at about 30%, you're still, for a person with disability, at 55,000.
Yes. Yeah. But the GLBI is not the all. You know what I mean?
I have a question.
The base.
I have a question. What is the cost of administrating this GLBI? Because my idea is basically take it or leave it. Because
what cost? What cost? Listen, the CRA can easily, inside of the same time you calculate your income taxes, knows exactly how much money to give you. What administrative costs?
Oh, well, absolutely.
Okay. So that's okay. That answers that, because I want to know if there's going to be administrative overhead and all of these, because what I'm looking at is
I wouldn't think that there's any more administrative overhead than what the CRA is already spending in their call center.
Yeah, there would be no more administration. No.
right.
But how much administration would be saved from the provinces?
Oh, huge.
Well, see, my idea is basically about giving people complete choice. Is like, if you want to put your kids in daycare, you've got money to put your kids in daycare. If you want to buy them clothes, you got the money for clothes. You want to put money away for for their college fund at $500 a month. You're going to get $96,000 for over 18 years. Okay, I mean, what we're talking about here is an idea of going and giving people the freedom of choice. So if they want to go and put their kid in a private school or a public school, they pay to put their kid there. Instead of it coming off on property taxes, we put this power directly back to into the parents' hands, back into your own hands, instead of going and having the government babysitting you at every turn. Right? We don't.
I fall somewhere between you guys. I fall right in the middle between where MJ's at and where Joseph's at.
And you actually are in the middle. You actually are in the middle square.
You are in the middle.
GLBI because of the price tag.
Right.
When you think of a universal program and you think universal and living wage, you are talking about something that's over $1 trillion a year.
Now,
no, we're not.
But it's all going back into the economy. Like, it's not like it's just disappearing in
a I'm not talking about universal. I'm talking universally available, so you can choose to take it or leave it.
To be fair, universal is still taxed
by
back.
GLBI.
Go ahead, Tom.
So universal is still taxed back. So this is the point that Milton Friedman said, which of course freaks out the left by even saying him. But Milton said that basically BI and NIT, GLBI, are two different ways of doing the same thing, because you're either doing the thing up front and then you get the clawed back version, or you're doing the tax back afterwards. So they always almost end up doing exactly the same thing.
I don't like to think of GLBI as a negative income tax.
Looks more expensive up front, but they're actually.
Yeah, I know, and I never read this guy, but I agree exactly with what you said, and that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
I don't agree that GLBI is a negative income tax, because
so that's a good question. That's how I wanted to ask you about that. What's the difference? Yeah. I know that a GLBI could have a waiting period and then the clawback.
A negative income tax is something more like what Ontario used to do, like more than a decade ago. When you filed your income taxes, you got $100 just for existing in Ontario. Everybody got that credit, right? That was a universal credit in Ontario, that you got that $100. And for all the people that were low income on social assistance, welfare at the time, because it wasn't Ontario Works back then, but welfare at the time, disability supports, anybody low income, they would use that $100 as part of their tax refund to pay for the services to do their taxes, to get their refunds.
Right.
And that's more of a negative income tax. That's you live, here's some money, right? Yeah. GLBI is based on your previous year's income. Right. It's still based on, if you change your income taxes later on and say, oh, I made more money, 3 years ago because, I didn't file this T4. Yeah. Then all of a sudden your GLBI gets clawed back.
See, this is what I'm thinking when it comes to like what happens.
That's not really a negative income tax.
What happens? Well, but I still think we should tax. I still like the idea of creating a basic income in whatever form and taxing it like an employment income back as well.
But a GLBI is non-taxable.
I understand. I'm just saying that's my preference.
That's the thing. But also.
Yeah. And I'm against all forms of income tax either way. So, I prefer, because, I prefer, we go with sales taxes, because once you put the money directly into the pocket, the people will spend it however they want. And if you say, well, it's good at 10% GST or 15% GST, you want to buy a car, buy a house, buy a boat, you want to buy, a box of candies for Halloween, you're going to pay 15% GST. It doesn't matter what you buy; it's going to be the same.
Now, the reason why I support scenario 3 for GLBI is because I know that the people that make more money than like $130,000, $140,000 a year, really aren't going to need it, right?
No,
they don't really need it. So you know what they're going to do? If you give them the option not to take it out and to accrue interest guaranteed by the government of Canada, right?
For retirement.
Or whatever. You could pick up the phone tomorrow and call the CRA and say, I'd like to withdraw my GLBI savings because I had an emergency at home.
Right. Yeah.
Thousands of dollars are hitting your bank account tomorrow.
Right, this is where, to me, I'm more of a libertarian, and I wouldn't want the government to be involved in that either. I want myself to be able to
I want the government to reward them with an interest while avoiding withdrawing that money and having more national debt.
Right.
If you do that by billions of dollars, then if you do that by billions of dollars where they save it, you'll eliminate all the program.
Come on, Tom.
The reason I like GLBI is because they're people like if they are taxed back heavily with the UBI, then it could get scary in the end of the year, like So it'd be like you'd want to make sure that they would actually have the stuff put aside for the tax.
I just feel that they won't index the universal.
But what's also really cool about what's not cool, it was what happened during COVID. But we had that thing where you could go online and you'd say, this is how much I made this week, and they went, oh, okay, we adjust it. Like we have that now. Like I mean, Alex Howlett made kind of a funny point, which is like, people are saying, well, was it Thomas More wanted basic income? Well, he actually didn't, but he's like, they couldn't have done basic income back then anyway. The infrastructure was non-existent. Right? Now we have the thing that I'm looking at right here that like a person can like, oh, my job just changed. This is my income now. Okay, we'll adjust it. Bang, just like that. Like you can, your GLBI can be totally.
Dan would say, he would say bootleg bits.
Yeah.
And now they costers, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, my income is, my working income is sporadic, and a lot of that could be alleviated by actually having a livable income.
Just give them the income.
Because the income I need,
it almost smooths
the income
out
that I need. Yeah, but the income that I need to look for work is the same. It's no different than the income that I spend going to work.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that drives me nuts. Like this idea that people are too poor to work. I mean, once you have to get on the system, and you're just like, you're just below what they call the poverty line. I can't, like, trying to get the money to make sure that I look presentable for a job interview, that I'm feeling my top because I'm been getting proper nutrition, and having the energy to go in there and be my best, the ability to keep my insurance on my vehicle, which is also my mobility device, and being able to get to these places, in order to do work. Not only that, I contribute. I still work when I'm not employed. I'm still doing much volunteer work, and that still costs me exactly to do that volunteer work. It costs me all the same money that it costs me to go to work. And so that's my issue is I can sit there and when you say that argument about basically that it doesn't cost as much not to work, it's not true. I am spending the same amount or more than when I was employed full time at $65,000 a year. Yeah. And so I'm making just over $20,000 a year right now. But my expenses are still 65 are still 60 or 65, and I don't have the income that I had, and it's like, and it makes it even harder to go back to school, to get a job, to do everything. And anytime I've collected supports, I was just telling these guys before you came on, when I was a single mom, I would get daycare, and I couldn't always find a job within daycare, but I found an agency that I would volunteer with, and I would volunteer like 80 hours a week doing that job and not getting paid except from income support. So this idea that it costs less not to work, I think is
I'm not talking about like the the bus fare or whatever. Okay, like I'm talking about like the
car insurance, travel,
the percentage of your income that you
Oh.
use for work.
Oh,
right?
I use more.
The problem here is that we're trying to go and sit here with this idea of, okay, let's pin down how much this costs and try to figure out how much we can mathematically create this answer to the perfect solution. And the problem is I'm one of these people that I will, I'll be honest, I'll sit there, I'll get stoned out of my gourd and think a problem through. And I've come to the solution that there's no perfect solution in this. There's only the best optimal solution that sucks for everybody equally and helps out everyone equally at the same time. Right?
I like that.
This is where we're at with the current system that we're in, is when you truly look at the breaking point of what we're dealing with is the cost benefit analysis is costing us more not to solve problems than it is to solve the problems. And we don't have political parties that truly are directly interested in solving these things. They give us a lot of lip service, and they tell us, they gaslight us to, we'll get to it. But then it comes to the next elections. Oh, we couldn't, this was more important. It's like, no, you just goofed off. All you did was goof off.
Right. Well, and by the way, I want to thank Joseph for bringing the spice to the conversation.
I'm not trying to spice it up, but
it's a good thing.
I'm just trying to bring to the point that a universal that we all want is just too expensive for Canada's economy.
Also, actually,
it's not.
Without deflating the dollar.
It's not.
We can debate this rapidly. We almost need a whole other hour.
Okay.
Yeah, we have actually reached 3 o'clock.
For dinner. It's like
if the entire federal budget.
Yeah.
If the entire federal budget is like $400 billion, okay, and a program that you want. Okay, but there's provincial budgets too. Yes.
I think there's something missing in your calculations of the cost.
You have to go and add all of them. And then you need to think about, okay, if we tackle these provincial budgets and we tackle all these things, then what about the people that lose their jobs in those? We still have to pay for them to get new jobs somewhere else. So you're not really taking that money out of the budget.
Well, actually,
you're just going to move that. No, you're not. You're just going to move that money to another department to retrain them.
Right.
I mean, see,
right
now
you're not losing all of that money. You're losing some of it, maybe 20% of it, but you're not taking away all of those budgets because you need to protect those jobs. Otherwise, the electorate won't support that program.
So you missed the whole segment where we were talking about the work becoming obsolete.
Yes.
Oh, maybe becoming obsolete, but us as humans, if we want a program that's going to be a universal program, that universal program is either going to come with two ifs. Okay, it's either going to come with if you're going to have a universal program where you're not required to work, then we want to tax you to make sure you pay for this program, or if you don't want to be taxed for this program, then you must work for a living and contribute to the program. Otherwise, you still can't have the program.
There's also things like Commons Capital Funds, like Guy Standing is talking about, but you build it up with things like land value tax, financial transaction taxes, other things like where you build it up like they do with Norway, like they do with Alaska, like Alaska Permanent Fund.
So we're just shuffling the can.
Stop letting our
else.
resources go for free.
Build it,
There's a big thing.
Like building it, like this is what Peter Barnes talks about, where you literally have, like you weren't here during this, where he talks about actually having the two movements of like the basic income, or UBI, if you want to call it. It's funny because Guy Standing doesn't even call it that because he doesn't think it could be universal anyway. But the basic income is the foundation, which is based on these like Commons Capital Fund things, and it could be small. It could be like $100, and so it makes it so the GLBI has less work to do. So you put that.
But the GLBI can be done on a napkin at the same time you file your income taxes. Look, a GLBI it costs nothing to administrate. Okay, it's all done by either direct deposit or by checks through the mail.
Yeah.
Just the same thing as your GST checks, but you wouldn't be needing your GST check every 3 months.
That could be.
So you're actually saving on all those checks.
Yeah.
It's. I mean,
Just
like
saving
that's
all
the
those
thing. Like,
checks.
okay,
Yeah.
Make sure you hear me. Make sure you hear me. I'm not like, oh, I gotta have UBI anyway. I'm not like that. What I'm saying is like, this is another idea. Like UBI, it doesn't have to be either this or that. Like it's almost like being a musician, where it's like that's not real jazz. It's like, well, it could be all these different kinds of. There's all different kinds of ideas out there. But
there's more than one GLB too. So
like I mean, even UBI Works, even Floyd and the gang from UBI Works has signed on the thing that we're all talking about, which is this policy push for a basic income guarantee or a guaranteed livable basic income in Canada, and everyone's pushing in the same way. So if you were like a purist, like it has to be UBI and that's it, I won't accept otherwise, you would be very lonely in Canada. We are the one country in the world that does this. So it's like that's the way we're going. It makes sense. We already have something that kind of feels familiar with the GST check, where if you make a lot of money, you don't get a GST check, but if you don't, you get it, and it feels very similar. So it's like, okay, so just imagine that monthly, and you can live on it. You know,
it's like all these quarterly payments that you're throwing out there, these grocery rebates and one-time payments, but it's all brought out where
it's just one thing, and it's based on a graduated. Graduated.
There's no good argument against
with Universal.
Joseph can tell you.
How are they going to index it? How are they really going to index it to inflation with the Universal?
Well, we could. That has to go to the legislation, and we have to push for that.
Commons Capital Fund.
No,
where it's like
no. Hear me out.
Alaska.
Okay.
Alaska, like they don't in Alaska go. Well, how much is the whatever? It's like, no, this is how much we got this year. Bang. You know, it's not.
I mean.
Yeah.
Canada
has
Alaska
based on their income.
Taking off the interest of the principal.
No, Alaska is based on division of citizens that live in Alaska, and their kids and all the rest of that stuff, and then it gets divided accordingly. That's how it works. And the problem we have here in Canada is when it comes to our resources, is we're practically giving them away for free.
Oh, hi! I'm in Alberta. Let me tell you that story.
We're giving them away for free, okay? And this is where we could be making the money to be able to go and partially pay for most of this. And this is where a lot of people go and sit here and argue, oh, that's more, it's going to raise the cost of living. Not really. The problem is we've got governments getting in the way. If we had a refinery in Alberta with the oil sands, the problems are solved. Now we've got
a lot of it is we used to get our royalties. We used to get 35 cents on the dollar, and now we're getting like 5. And the thing is, and what it is so these companies that aren't even from Alberta, like they're these multinational, are making all this profit and not paying us our royalties on our own product.
They're not paying the tax on it.
Yeah, they're not paying they're not. Oh, they're also derelict on taxes on top of it, but they're also not paying us our full royalties for a product that's ours. Yeah.
Well,
we'll nationalize it. Forget it. We'll nationalize the oil sands.
We could go on for another hour or more, but we do have to kill the show now. I have to be the show killer. And
we can do a special like each Monday we'll do the roundtable, but we can do a special segment later in the week if that's fine. Like
if you want to do
as a catch up to where we left off on whatever day you guys whatever works good.
Yeah. Well, for the last time on this show, for now, sign the derb.ca petitions because they're both going to be done within the next week.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah. And so
the Arise one will still be running, but the official ones for the government will stop within the next week. So please tell all your friends to sign it.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds great, Joseph. And what day? So we're going to do the roundtable ongoing each Monday. I mean, if some people can't show up on Monday, that's fine.
This might be the last time I'm coming in from a home. So just so
right.
Yeah, do them off and on. Like I can't always say yes, but I mean I'll try to be.
Exactly.
I want to learn.
And we can do a special segment, in between or whatever. But Yeah, like what, like later this week, if we were to do a catch-up segment and just focusing on kind of like what we're talking about right now, what day would be good?
Yeah.
What day would be good?
Well,
Any day but Friday.
We can do this. We can do this off camera too.
Yeah.
We can just have Tom play us out, and then we'll.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
So we'll ending comments. I want to thank everyone, each and every one of you, for joining in today, and happy Thanksgiving again.
Yes.
And Tom's going to. He's gonna sing Buble bits there, Dan. You know, Buble bits? No.
I was just gonna do this first.
Or Ellen,
Derb is the word.
Derb is the word.
No. The reason I'm playing this bass is because for
money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basic income is not a panacea in the same way as this instrument right here.
Yeah.
It just sits underneath. It's a simple little thing, but it affects everything above me. Like when you play a bass line, it affects the chord structure above you, affects the rhythm of it, and all that stuff. So, even though it isn't everything, it can affect everything, and that's it. So all that for that simple little thing. But here's a completely silly song. I was trying to come up with something that was both Derb and Thanksgiving.
This is where it gets really entertaining, everyone.
Yeah, I think.
You saw the turkey one, right?
I think
That's good.
Jake, what Jake did is far superior to what I'm going to do. But there you go.
That's classic. Isn't it?
Whoever watch the Jake video, it's awesome.
Definitely.
What you do it with Jake?
Yeah.
Well, it would have been nice if I could have some turkey. I know not everybody's got a turkey here too. Gotta think twice. Some people vegetarian, low FOD, not vegan, but they gotta eat too. They don't get time off from lack of income. Time to get these numbers off the floor. Oh, when holidays come, it's just that much more weight. Needs to be some income and there needs to be more. So they gotta have derb. They've gotta have derb. And they gotta have derb. They've gotta have derb.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today, and stay tuned for our next upcoming episodes.
Thank you, everyone.